All right, next I want to turn to some arguments for and against the three positions that we have articulated here, asking the question, why might one come to think that dualism is true? Why might one come to question dualism and think, therefore, that some sort of reductive materialism or integrationism is true? Again, it's a hugely complicated set of issues, and a huge literature on all of these issues has been developed. So I'm just going to single out four arguments or four considerations that have traditionally motivated dualism, some considerations that have traditionally motivated the other two approaches, the more naturalistic approaches, and then we'll turn to issues of the educational implications of one's subscription to either dualism or integrationism or reductive materialism. All right, so suppose we ask the question why we might come to think that dualism is true. That is to say, why might we think that the physical and the psychological are different kinds of stuff, different kinds of substances, that we can't explain the human being either in purely materialistic terms or purely spiritual terms? Well, one reason, of course, people historically have come to dualism is not that they have necessarily thought through that particular set of issues independently and looked at the arguments for and against, but rather that dualism comes packaged with a religious set of beliefs that they have had. So they might, for example, have been raised in a religious tradition, and dualism is simply part of that religious tradition. They have a religious tradition that says, for example, God exists. God is a purely spiritual being. He's completely other from the natural world, which is a purely physical part of reality. And then we come to know God through faith in certain traditions or faith in certain scriptures. And so part of the overall package of beliefs that the person absorbs is the idea that the human being then is partly soul, partly body, that when he or she dies, the body returns to dust, the soul separates from the body, and then goes on to its ultimate destiny, which might be to go to heaven or to go to hell, or in some versions of Eastern religions, to be reincarnated into another body. So one reason why people might come to dualism is simply that it is part of a religious package. Now, second reason is particularly thinking within the terms of that religious package. If one gets philosophical about it and thinks about the implications of dualism, one part of the package that's typically important to most religions is the issue of morality. And the question of, if we have a certain set of views that we think are moral, we want people to behave certain ways, what is going to motivate them to act morally and to avoid various kinds of immoral behaviors that we might think they are tempted to partake in? And dualism can be a part of a moral package, arguing that morality requires a certain kind of motivation, and that a naturalistic approach to understanding the human being isn't going to provide that. Naturalism, one of the implications of it is that there is no such thing as a soul that is separate from the body that survives bodily death, and so that if that's the case, when we die, the story is over for us. And then the question is, if that's all there is to life, why should we act morally according to traditional religious moralities here? So we might then argue that if we believe in dualism and we get people to believe in dualism, people will then believe that their soul has a life that carries on past this bodily existence, past their existence in this physical world, and that the fate of their soul in the afterlife is contingent upon how they behave in the here and now. And so morality requires dualism, the idea here being as a motivator. People will act morally if they think they're going to heaven or hell, depends upon their acting morally. If they don't believe there is such a thing as a heaven or hell, if they don't believe that there's a soul that they have and that other people have, then morality from this perspective seems to be a non-starter.